Well, hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Stephanie Roothouse, the Director of Customer Marketing and Communications at Replicon, and I'm joined by my colleague Scott Bales, our Director of Solutions Engineering. On behalf of Replicon, we'd both like to thank you so much for being a Replicon customer and also for taking the time to join us on this webinar to discuss best practices for integrating Replicon with your business applications. So before we get started, I'd like to just go over the process we'll have in terms of you submitting questions. You'll be on mute during the presentation, but during the entire time you'll be able to submit questions through the Q&A section on the right-hand side of your screen. So feel free to submit any questions on through that way at any time, and toward the end we will start a Q&A, and you can ask any questions that you may have. So let's dive right into a poll question to set the context of the conversation. So what are you integrating Replicon with today? And we have a list here for you to choose from, and you can choose all that apply, so you're not limited to just one. So the first option you'll see is HRIS, the second is payroll/finance, the third is project management, the fourth is other, and the fifth is nothing. So you should be able to see that those options on your right-hand side. The poll is now open. So Scott, as everyone is deciding what they're going to select, what is your prediction? What do you think we'll probably see most customers integrating with?
I think that what we're going to see is probably a couple of things. One is going to be a lot of payroll or finance integrations. I think the nature of the webinar today really lends itself to people that aren't doing anything, perhaps, and that's why they're here. Good
point. So let's share those poll results. So I think we've had ample time to respond to them, and you'll see, everyone should be able to see them. They're in percentages, so we have about, interesting, 50% say payroll finance, and then we have a significant number as well that are integrating currently with other, which we can't wait to find out what that other is, and then also nothing is also has been checked quite a bit, and then HRIS. So it looks like it's quite a variety, and I think we'll find out a little bit more about those.
We will, and I think what we'll do is we're actually going to touch on several of these, so that's great. And what we'll also do is I'll encourage people to come forward during the Q&A at the end and tell us about the other that you are integrating with, because that would be a huge benefit for the other attendees on the call. Okay. Now, what we're going to touch on today is, of course, why you are integrating today, why you're going to integrate in the future with the Replicon solution, and one of those reasons is to automate processes. If you're not integrating with Replicon, what you're probably doing is some manual data entry. This is going to lend itself to errors and issues with the data that you're finding in Replicon or in the other systems if you're taking data out of Replicon and pushing it elsewhere. So we want to automate that process as much as possible. It's also going to lend itself well to timely completion. We don't have to wait for a manual person to enter that information elsewhere. Freeing up the time of that individual is going to increase productivity. So if you're not having somebody manually bring the information into Replicon or push it elsewhere, that time that is being spent doing that is now going to be freed up. That is going to allow that resource to dedicate time to other, perhaps revenue-generating items within your organization, or focus on their core business skill and improving their productivity across their own schedule as well as others. It's also going to mean that you'll be able to synchronize that data across multiple systems. We've all sat around a boardroom table, and one person is quoting numbers and metrics with regard to your revenue or your billable amounts or your time off and outstanding balances, and somebody else at the table has a different set of numbers. All of that can be avoided if you are integrating systems so that they're all communicating with each other and synchronizing data so that everybody is working off a common set of information, one system of record, disseminating that information out throughout the organization and integrating with other integral systems. Now, we've seen some reasons why you would want to integrate. What I want to take some time to do now is focus on a couple of those systems we talked about in the poll and see how customers are leveraging those existing investments in those systems to integrate with Replicon, because there's a great complementary relationship there in the case of other systems within the organization. So the first one we're going to take a look at is HRIS. HRIS, for those of you that don't know, is just Human Resources Information System. This is your system of record, or your master list of all your employees in your organization. Oftentimes it will store additional information such as their pay details, perhaps any training or accreditations they may have, along with maybe benefits information related to employees. Okay. So there's a great relationship there because Replicon obviously has those same users within it, and Expedia, the travel website company, saw that relationship, and as do many other customers, and I wanted to leverage the fact that they had an HRIS system where all of their employees were being placed, and they wanted those employees to flow seamlessly into Replicon. They did not want the double entry. They knew that they would have a high turnover rate. The situation for Expedia is a call center situation, leveraging our product. So they do have a user base that does see some turnover. That turnover can exponentially add overhead if you need to add users in multiple places. So they said, we want to bring our users in from our HRIS system into Replicon seamlessly, and that's what they're doing. They're doing it real time. So what happens is, as the users put into the HRIS system, that system makes a call to the Replicon API, the RepliConnect API, and creates the user on the Replicon side, creating not only the user, but their login details, their specific permission sets, what they have access to. All of those user specifics can be automated from a setup perspective. Next system, and this is probably our oldest integration. Ever since we've been producing time capture, we have needed to provide the ability to take that information to payroll. That payroll system, maybe ADP, Ceridian, Millennium. That could also fall over into the financials group if you're doing your payroll or generating paychecks out of your financial system. And the customer we're going to talk about here is GeoDigital. GeoDigital is a geographic and geophysical data capture organization, and their biggest challenge has really been growth through acquisition. So they'll bring on all of these additional companies, and those additional companies will have their own systems in place. They needed a quick, easy to implement system that they could push out to these acquisitions without a lot of overhead from a training perspective, and that's why they selected Replicon. Specific to their payroll integration, what they were dealing with is two completely different payroll vendors. Some of their acquisitions are international, so they had to not have a single payroll extract, but multiples. And Replicon was able to provide that for them, giving them the ability to generate two payroll extracts from the same instance of our tool, so they could still report across all of their users while still maintaining multiple differential payroll extracts to those systems. Okay. Now, from an architecture perspective, they're doing a combination. So they're pulling that data out through our RepliConnect API, the same API that lets us bring users in for that HR transfer. But what they're doing is they're generating a flat file in a predetermined format for payroll, and all payroll organizations are going to have this predetermined format that allows you to upload your time capture. What Replicon is able to do is provide that file in that format so that it's just a matter of importing it into the payroll vendor of your choice. Okay, and that's what we refer to as a hybrid solution. It's using a combination of a flat file along with an API call to our system. The next one is projects. Now, although nobody on the call is currently integrating to projects, if you are leveraging our time cost or time bill version of our product, you are going to have some concept of projects within the system, and those projects may reside outside of Replicon in another system. So what we produced, and this integration is one example of what's possible. What we produced was an out-of-the-box integration with Microsoft Project. And the reason we wanted to bring this up is because not all of our integrations are behind the scenes with programming that is being written to bring data between two systems. Some of those integrations, like Microsoft Project, provide a user interface. And the Microsoft Project integration is a downloadable file. You install it on your local machine, and then project managers can open it up. They can determine the mappings that they would like to use to bring project information into Replicon and push that time detail back to Microsoft Project, and they can then synchronize projects on their time. They can synchronize their own projects. Each project manager can be responsible for that when they're ready to do so, and it prevents them from having to manually enter progress towards their projects inside of Microsoft after it's been done in Replicon. BankTech situation was they were moving towards a time capture mechanism. Replicon was going to provide that, but they had all of these PMs that were saying, listen, we're using Microsoft Project to track our projects. We don't want to have to leverage another tool. We don't have to enter all of that data twice. And Replicon provided them with the integration module so that they wouldn't have to do that. Okay. The last specific customer example that we're going to talk about is finance system. And this example that we're going to use for Hawaii Gas, this is a gas company in Hawaii, is really one of our more complex integrations. So we want to focus on the complexity that's possible here and the fact that Hawaii Gas is bringing over projects and pay codes from Dynamics into Replicon on a regular basis. That's all done through the eConnect interface that is available. Those of you that run Dynamics will be familiar with this. And that's just another API on the Great Plains side. We're bringing that information in through that eConnect interface, pushing it into the Replicon solution, and then once the users are entering time, that information is validated through an integration, and then exported back to Dynamics through the integration as well. So again, real-time transfer of data between the two systems through our API. This integration is very complex, and it is a showcase of the complexities that can be involved in that transfer between the two systems. Now, there are several reasons why these and other integrations succeed when we're dealing with Replicon. And don't get me wrong, understandably, integrations are often a point of failure with other systems. Replicon's aware of that and has worked hard to put processes in place to avoid that. One of those is backward compatibility. What this really means is that integrations that are written today still work tomorrow. Upgrades to our system do not affect your integrations because all of your integrations are written through our RepliConnect API. And we can upgrade the system as much as we need to without affecting that interface or the calls that are being made through that API. So that means that no matter what happens, you're not left stranded or orphaned on a legacy version of our product because your integration can't be upgraded. Configurable interfaces. So the other point we should bring up here is that these integrations aren't written in stone. These are not one-off integrations that will never be able to be modified. These are configurable. So if something changes in your organization and you need to map additional fields, or there's new attributes you would like to leverage within Replicon or your external system, we can help with that because these interfaces are configurable. The push and pull of information is not static, and it can be changed dynamically when you're ready to make those changes. The last reason for success with regard to our integrations is SOA, or service-oriented architecture. The service-oriented architecture is really forms the basis of our application, and all that means is that all of the modules or portions of our product are communicating with each other through service calls. So when the timesheet wants to know who approves this timesheet, it makes a service call to say, tell me the approvers. And these are all internal service calls. If I want to add a new user, then the system calls the add user service. The benefit to you as a prospect is that those service calls that you're using from an integration perspective are the same service calls our product is using internally to run every single day. So those service calls are going to be very performant. They're going to be very efficient because the system is using them thousands and thousands of times a day. They're also going to be automatically tested, so you don't have to worry about your interfaces breaking because we're using those same interfaces in our product. So you get the benefit of all of our automated testing real time without worrying that something's going to fall through the cracks, because we're already testing it because we're using those same services within the application that you're using externally. Now, I would like to just take pause. I know we've got a few questions, so I want to stop here and see if we can answer some of those questions, Stephanie, if it makes sense at this time.
Sure. So we do have a few questions coming over, Scott. I'll just start with the first one that came over. Besides the specific application integrations you mentioned, what other third parties does Replicon support with integration?
Good question. Good question. Really, the list is huge, and the answer that we're always giving from a sales perspective is that as long as we are communicating with an open system and not a closed system, and to be honest with you, a lot of those closed systems don't exist anymore, there's no reason why we can't integrate with whatever system you need us to integrate with. Most systems out there will provide an API similar to Replicon's. If they don't provide an API or an application programming interface, then they provide a facility for uploading a file, like payroll vendors that are out there. So specifically, that list that we've integrated with has hundreds of items on it. If you're curious if the systems you would like to integrate with are on there, please let us know, and we're happy to speak to those. But there's no limit to the number of or the specific systems that we can integrate with. It's an open interface.
Okay, and then there's another one, Scott, that's related, and it's concerning legacy systems such as AS400 that it sounds like some customers still need to maintain. So what would your response be on that?
Yeah, AS400 is a good example. This is probably an old legacy dinosaur system that's in the back of your office somewhere. It's not going anywhere anytime soon. And you're worried about touching anything or changing anything there, but you still would like to integrate with it. Because we have different options, we have the real-time integration, we have flat file. Because we have different options for integration, you're not limited. That AS400, although old, is still going to be able to likely leverage the oldest integration method known to man, which is a flat file exchange. That's the movement of text files or CSV files in and out of that system, and although archaic, it is very quick, very efficient to implement, and oftentimes the most bulletproof integration there is. So I would say to whoever asked the AS400 question, it is not a question of how old the system is. We're absolutely capable of integrating in that situation.
Okay. And then another one that relates sort of to this whole idea of what the library is of integrations is Sage 50 on that list of systems that Replicon is integrated with.
It is. So Sage does have a couple of different levels of product that they're providing to consumers, and there are, because some of them are actually acquisitions, there are different interfaces for them. Certain higher-end Sage products actually require you to buy an integration library to support the integrations, whereas lower-end Sage items like Sage 50 allow for a flat file import where we can produce that format and bring it in that way. But Sage 50 is something that we've worked with in the past from an integration perspective.
Okay. And Scott, what about Microsoft SSRS to produce invoices? Are you aware of other Replicon customers that have done this?
I will be honest with you, SSRS, the acronym escapes me, so I apologize for that. If you want to just put in a little more detail around that, I'm happy to comment on it. But with the other Microsoft products, Navision, Dynamics GP, we are producing invoices out of those systems based on the data from Replicon. Exapta or AX is also another example where we are pushing that data to a Microsoft product to produce invoices. We'll keep an eye on the question pane and see if there's more detail around SSRS. Was that it?
That's right.
Stephanie?
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, we can definitely follow up if we need to there.
Okay, and it does look like we have a real-time sort of response to the question. SSRS is the reporting services product for Microsoft, SQL Server Reporting Services.
Oh, okay. So what we would do in that case, so that's a great question. It lends itself to customers that they're really running data warehouses and doing some analytics. What we do expose is all of the data. So there's no direct database access to our system through the internet, which is something that Microsoft SQL Reporting Services would leverage, direct access to a database. So what we do in those cases is we extract the data from our system. There's nothing hidden, so you're still able to get all of that data, and we just feed it into a local data store, so a local data warehouse, and from that local data store, you can then attach SQL Server Reporting Services to produce the output that you need, similar to likely what you're doing today if you have a local version of our product.
Okay. And then there's some questions specifically around RepliConnect, Scott. So the first is just what is the user level security in it?
Sure. So RepliConnect enforces the same user level security as the product. So one, it's something that you enable per user. So not everybody would be able to write an application that accesses it. Third, it does authenticate access. So Stephanie would access that API or RepliConnect as herself. And if she was to write a program that said, give me all of the timesheets in the system, she would only be able to see what she was able to see through the application. So she wouldn't be able to get additional access to the API that way. So the same user level permissions are enforced there as are enforced through the application.
Okay, and there's just a question about how to access RepliConnect.
So those details are available through the developer zone in the customer area of our website, and it really is step-by-step as far as what it's going to take to access those interfaces. As a SaaS customer, you have access to that. It's just a matter of making sure you have the administrative permissions to turn it on if you don't already have permission to do so.
Okay, and then just in terms of training, there's a question about, you know, whether customers would need to have their programmers train on Replicon's API. What's your thought on that?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on your the experience level of your developers. It is fully documented and open, and it's an open standard. We're not using any proprietary technologies when it comes to our API. So I would say somebody that is experienced in writing an integration through a web service interface is going to be comfortable writing an integration to Replicon. We do provide support for that API through our standard support channel, so you don't need to worry if you have questions that come up. You'll be able to talk to support and say, hey, here's what I'm trying to do. Support isn't going to write your integrations for you, obviously, but they can help point you in the right direction, give you advice as far as service calls that you're looking to make. And at the end of the day, if it's not something that you have an appetite for and it is something that you'd like to say, hey, I don't have those development resources, can you take this on for me, then that's something that your account rep can talk to you about. And we do have a team in place that can help produce those integrations for you if needed.
Great. And Scott, in terms of how can customers make sure RepliConnect recognizes changes made on timesheets? What would be your response to that?
It's really a two-way. It's a two-way street. So, in addition to, because it is a two-way interface, in addition to pulling that timesheet data out, what we would recommend from a best practice is actually to flag or mark that data within the product once you do so. And if you are flagging the data, then any changes that are made to that timesheet will also be reportable. So the first step of any API call would be to check, hey, have any timesheet changes taken place based on my last, export, and then you can perform different actions based on that. So I guess my answer is it's a two-way street. The same way you pull data out, you'll be able to push flags into the system to say, hey, I've taken this, I've taken this, and I've taken this, so that you can reference those at a later date to make sure that nothing's changed.
Great. Well, thank you for that, Scott. I don't see another question coming over on the Q&A chat field. So I would just echo Scott's comment about if you would like to learn more details about integrating some of your applications with Replicon, we would encourage you to speak with your account manager or your customer success specialist. And if you're not aware of who exactly is in that role at Replicon, I would be happy to field that question from you. If you'd like to send me an email, and I could just forward it on to the appropriate people, and they can be in contact with you. And would like to, again, thank you for joining the webinar. We do have an upcoming webinar next month for customers. It's going to be based on group hierarchies, which is a new feature in our Q1 release that has not yet been announced, but will be available, and allows you to create hierarchical groups for system administrators and payroll managers. So please keep your eye out for more information on that webinar. And we certainly will be inviting you to that, and we'll be sending you as well a link of a recording to this webinar today in case you had some colleagues that weren't able to attend. So with that, thanks again, and have a wonderful day.